What would you?
Well, you posed a very huge question, where is jazz going?
All
And
right.
it's interesting. I just had a visit from a friend of mine, a musician who lives down in New Orleans. I knew him in New York, and we both ended up in New Orleans. And he's kind of a disgruntled drummer who can't get a gig. And his comment to me was, "Oh, nothing's happening. There's no new music. There's nothing happening, you know?" And
Wow.
I beg to differ.
Yeah,
Of
I hope
course, I'm
so.
getting stuff sent to me from record companies, but I'm getting 20 CDs a week, hard copies, the physical copies, and
Right.
then maybe twice that many as digital links. It's a deluge from week to week of uh, new releases, new people. I just got one yesterday. 90-year-old George Coleman has a record with strings. I mean, there's a wealth of material. This guy's crazy. There's a lot happening. And even if you just hold on to the elders, Ron Carter is still playing. Uh, Kenny Barron is still creating great music. Herbie is still touring and playing. You know, there's a whole slew of, I would say, living legends. Then there's another cut, which I would call like maybe they've attained elder status.
Right.
In that category, you could put in everyone from Joe Lovano and John Schofield to Frizzell, Mike Stern, man, a whole bunch of people. Um, then there's established veterans. I would say Kurt Rosenwinkel and Mark Turner. Um, Pianist Mike Ladon, who had a nice comment. I don't remember if I mentioned this in the last one,
No.
but he said, "I'm playing to honor the ancestors." So he's very straight ahead and swinging, and that's where it's at for him. Meanwhile, there's a whole generation of younger players who are bringing some new stuff to the party, and it's being called jazz adjacent music
Yeah,
because
I love that phrase. You use that lots of times.
people are bringing in elements of hip hop or music, folkloric music from the countries they come from, or experimenting with electronic music and with the spirit of improvisation. So there is a lot going on. I get a slew of music coming in the mail every day, and this guy's crazy, or just too bitter to open his ears, or pissed off that he can't get a gig. But man, just thinking about it. Um, so what I did in preparing for this talk
Okay.
is I came up with a list. Man, and this is a long list too. Oh, you know what? Let me include in the living legends list people like Houston Person, who just turned 90. I saw him a couple weeks ago. Incredible. Charles Lloyd, he's coming up on 90. Andrew Cyrille, Jack DeJohnette, Billy Harper, Dave Holland, John McLaughlin. I would say all living legends.
George.
Elders, what did
How
you
old?
say?
How old is George Benson now?
In his 80s?
Yeah, I know he's in his 80s. Yeah.
I'm not sure exactly.
Yeah.
Those who have attained respected elder status would include,
Well, I think if you're in your 80s, you could be considered an elder.
yeah, but then there's people like Dave Liebman and Eddie Henderson,
Yeah.
Billy Harper, Gary Bartz, Charles McPherson. What about Winton and Bradford? Are they considered elders at this point? They're respected veterans for sure, but given how many bands they've led and how many careers they've really started for other
I don't think we
people,
can call him an elder. Winton, for example, Winton's in his early 60s. I think elder starts at around 72, 3, 4, 5, ish. Maybe not even that. Maybe 79,
there's a
80.
lot of cats in their 70s, including me, that, are still actively pursuing their field of interest and doing it in
Yeah.
creative ways. Then there's people that are, inching into this elder status, but maybe they're just at this point respected veterans. But I would definitely include those guys, Chris Potter and Joe Farnsworth, Eric Alexander, Eric Reed. I mean, there's a whole bunch. Mark Turner. Uh,
George Benson's 82.
okay, so it's getting up there, but he's still playing like a badass.
Oh yeah.
Mike Clark, great drummer. He is 76. He's got a new album. I just got his new album today. Man, he is swinging. What about Tane? Elder status, respected veteran, Peter Erskine. You know, these guys are getting up and they're still creating and they're still productive, incredibly so. Um, Lewis Nash, Adam Nussbaum, Carl Allen, great drummer, Christian McBride, Dave Stryker, Rodney Jones. These are respected veterans on the scene.
Respected veteran, I think would when you start talking about Stryker and Rodney,
Yeah.
they're still young guys, you know.
Okay, but now
You can't compare them.
we have a whole crew of under 40 people that are making strong statements that are personal and they're drawing from other aspects beyond just swinging and playing
Yeah.
the standards. Uh, I would put, and I have a list of a number of people, but at the top of that list, I would put Emmanuel Wilkins, who is a alto player, records for Blue Note. He's only 27 and he's had three incredible acclaimed albums already. And the thing with him is he's not only he can burn like Charlie Parker. There's a legacy between him and Bird and Gary Bartz and Dolphy and all these cats, just in terms of facility on the horn. But he's also a person that's interested in making a socio-political statement with his music, which he's done on every one of his albums. His 2020 album, Omega, his debut on Blue Note, was called An Eloquent Dissertation on the Black Experience in America.
Hmm.
He followed up with 2022's Seventh Hand, which was a reflection on the Pentecostal church and the Black experience in America, that involved, tracking lynchings and shit throughout time. His most recent Blues Blood examined the case of the Harlem Six, some black teens who were falsely accused of a murder in 1965 and who were brutally beaten by cops to elicit a confession. Eerily, a precursor to the Central Park Five, who were five teenagers who wrongly convicted of raping a white woman in Central Park in 1989. And all of this goes back to Emmett Till, of course, the case from 65 of a 14-year-old black kid who was, abducted and lynched for whistling at a white woman. This is the type of stuff that interests Emmanuel Wilkins, who's a killer player. He also is a sideman on Kenny Barron's most recent album. And this politically minded blending of jazz and activism really goes back to Max Roach's 1960 album, We Insist, the Freedom Now Suite, which addressed the civil rights movement and the Emancipation Proclamation with Abby Lincoln. Or even further back, Billie Holiday's Strange Fruit, a song about lynching that she recorded in 38. Charles Mingus, Fables of Faubus, 55, about the Arkansas governor's attempt to block school integration. Or even Trains, Alabama, about the four young girls who were killed in the bombing of a church in Alabama in 1963. So Emmanuel Wilkins is a potent voice on this scene of new people creating new things because not only of his visionary musical abilities, but his political activism that he's bringing to the party. And I think it's important music, and it's just he's doing what no one else is doing. So I put him at the top of the list. There's a whole list of other young people that are making contributions now, bringing like let's say here's a group of drummers who are sometimes categorized as so-called beat scientists. They're drummer, rapper dudes who are working with electronica music and jazz and improvisation, sort of like techno futurists, groove masters, Micaiah McCraven just released 4 EPs simultaneously on Blue Note. So this is a productive guy. His creativity is spilling over. Casa Overall is a drummer rapper. This guy, Peter Mannheim, is sort of mixing
Let me ask you a question.
psychedelic, hypnotic stuff.
Let me ask you a question and all that. I don't mean to interrupt you, but are they selling any of these things?
I have no idea. I don't know that anybody makes money in jazz.
But I mean, are they? I mean, your friend, the drummer in New Orleans that is bitching and moaning and complaining. He sounds to
Yes,
me like an out of work guy.
that's exactly the facts.
Yeah. So I mean, he. This is me putting words in his mouth, and I apologize to him. I don't know him, do in all respect, but that sounds like a guy who's made his living as a drummer, and now he can't. It's got nothing to do with him being able to create or not create. He can't make a living playing music right now. And
Plus,
that's what he's pissed off about.
he doesn't seek it out. He doesn't go to clubs, see new
Yeah, oh no,
expressions.
that's a whole different subset of the why. Well, why? But I mean, there's a lot of those guys out there that they're bitter because they once made a living playing and now they can't make a living playing and it's all everybody else's fault. And I want,
I,
I'm painting with the biggest freaking brush
no,
anybody
I get
can.
that. I
You
get,
know,
and I think you're accurate about that. But then
yeah,
I think about Lee Konitz,
yeah,
who I used to see at gigs all the time.
yeah.
He was going all the time to see music, checking it out, getting inspired, getting ideas, getting some energy off the bandstand. He was curious up until the end, seeking out music. I mean, I'd see him at the Jazz Standard, at Birdland, uh, Smalls. This cat was in his 80s and he was still seeking out
There are guys here in
music.
Atlanta that are the same way. I mean, they're busy as hell playing, and when they're not
Right.
playing, they're showing up at the jams and staying relevant in that way. And their music, when they do play, their music is very interesting. I've got a friend of mine who's he's not an older guy by any stretch of imagination, but piano player here in town who was just, I mean, I think he does 500 gigs a year. I mean, it's like crazy. And but he's engaged, he's busy. It's not all of it's not straight ahead jazz, but he stays very busy because he makes that his thing, if you will. A little bit more difficult for a single note, like for a horn player, because you can't do a solo horn gig unless you play with tracks, which not many of those guys will or want to. Can't blame them. But the question in all of this is, or actually the answer that I'm hearing from you on the big question of where is jazz? And jazz is no longer for most people, and including most of these people that go to jazz schools, me included, I went to jazz school. Um, it's no longer, that's not a pathway to a career in your art necessarily. And so now it's about, well, are you making art or are you, why do you play? Why do you want to play? Are you playing because you want to create art? Do you want to communicate with people? Do you want to make a living? You want to pick up girls or boys, depending on what you do? What is it that you're doing out there? And I think for people who are expecting to be able to raise a family, strictly on playing music and not teaching in addition to or not doing something else in addition to, um, those days that's not many guys can pull that off.
No, that is an inner circle of, the very few. Schofield, I would put in that category, who gigs all the time and is making money. But a great percentage of all the veteran players subsidize their art by teaching at
Yeah,
schools, at universities,
yeah,
at
absolutely. Well,
at
you mentioned,
Berkeley,
I think
private lessons.
I think Dave Stryker's teaching at 3 universities. I
Right,
know Pasquale Grasso is teaching at 3 schools.
right.
Dave, well, I mentioned Dave. I mean, a lot of these guys are playing, not only they're teaching at one university, they're teaching at two or three. And what people who don't understand the university thing is that there are a lot of universities that have guitar departments that's six students. Okay, I thought when I was going into it, I thought, okay, there's going to be 50 to 100 guys with guitars, and and it's going to be it's going to be like like being a history major or something, or a psych major, where you're in classes with large groups of people. um I talked to some guys from the California schools, with big names, and big schools, and their whole department might be less than a half a dozen guys. I mean, I'm talking about the students. um so Yeah, I mean, you not only have you got to teach, but you got to probably have multiple teaching gigs in order to make that work. And the beauty of a university gig, of course, is you don't have to keep going out and seeking new students all the time, because as we know that the attrition in that world is, that's enough to give anybody a pain in the ass.
And
But
there's so many great universities around. You must know more than
fantastic.
I do, besides Berkeley and North Texas State University in Miami, William Patterson. I mean, there's great programs all over the country.
There are hundreds. And a lot of these guys, they were educated at North Texas State, or they were educated at Berkeley, or they were educated, wherever they were, and they got the call from this school or that school or whatever. And that's what they're doing. And the school wants to have a jazz guitar department. And so they hire these guys as adjuncts. And in the case of Corey Christiansen, whose dad, of course, was a full professor, now he's the chair there in Utah. Then some of that stuff happens. But I mean, I don't really know enough about. I mean, I look at Sean McGowan, who's out in Colorado, doing his thing out there, and there's a ton of guys that are just, making it that way. So I think that I think that what I'm deriving from this, and whether it's accurate or not, I don't know, but is that if you want to be a creative jazz musician and not a gigging working jazz musician, who will play autumn leaves until the cows come home, um, then you better have other sources of income. And if you're going to create art, you got to be ready to realize that, the world might not be economically feasible for you to be an artist that gets paid enough to make it. You just have to have that reality there. This is what I'm kind of surmising from all of this.
Well, in the 70s, so many musicians hustled in the studios of New York.
Yeah,
Michael Brecker was perhaps the most prominent. He continued having his own career, but he was making money doing commercial recordings and different, commercial gigs. There's a whole crew of people who did that. And uh, nowadays, people hustle in different ways. I know a drummer who is a great creative drummer who plays, uh, uh, many gigs and recordings, but he also does a fairly steady gig in the pit orchestra on Broadway, which
right.
is a steady source of income for him,
Absolutely.
allowing him to do his own records and occasional few week tour with someone as a sideman. So I think people have always been creative in hustling ways to get over. The problem, I think we may have discussed this previously, was the rents in New York now require that you'd have to have five jobs to pay what once upon a time, I mentioned Michael Brecker, his first loft that he had on 18th Street was like $400 a month and it was 2,000 square feet. Or maybe it was 200. You play a couple of gigs and you have the month covered and you do the rest of the time jamming, writing, figuring out music. It was a lot freer then. I can't imagine being a young musician coming out of Berkeley and moving to New York right now. How are you going to make that
I have no idea.
rent-wise?
Yeah,
I
I have
know,
no
I know
idea.
people are tripling up, five in a two-bedroom apartment and this splitting the rent. It's rough. It
My
used to be a lot easier.
my friend Eddie Wright, rest his soul, he passed away a few years back, but he was an amazing guitar player, and he went to New York and he was there for a couple of years and all of that, and he couldn't handle the lifestyle. You get on the bus with your amp and your guitar and
Right.
schlep, to use a New York term, just schlep all over the place. And then you're living and sharing 500 feet with a couple of guys, and it's you know, and as opposed to coming back down to Atlanta, and he was on a tour bus for the last several years of his life, with a big show band, making good money and living with his woman and living a good life. Unfortunately, his health didn't hold up. That's a whole other story. But I mean, that's just one story. There's a whole lot of people that have gone to New York and have come back home because they just didn't want to do it. It isn't, and I don't disparage them for that because that's a life that you have to decide that is worth it to you. You don't
I,
want this. You want that.
uh,
And these are things you have to give up at least short term or medium term or maybe even long term.
I
If
remember the great drummer Paul Motion made a very conscious decision one day to just stop touring, stop traveling. He was living in an apartment right off of Central Park West, and his attitude was, "If you want to see me play, come down to the Vanguard. I play there a couple times a year, but I'm not getting on a plane anymore." He just didn't want to do it. I think John McLaughlin is in the same category right now. He doesn't really want to do that touring thing all over the world and getting on planes. He'll go from Monaco to Montreal to play a gig, but I'm not Montreal, Montreal. But he
but
doesn't want to tour on planes and do that whole,
yeah,
But he's in his 80s and Motion was up there as well when he made that decision. And yeah, it's tough touring and traveling, especially as a respected elder figure.
well, Robin Ford said it to me. I love it. How's the old line go? Brad Pitt and George Clooney told me not to name drop. It's cheeky. Anyway, but Robin Ford, said to me, he said, "I play for free. You pay me to travel."
Mm,
And he's not the only one. That's a paraphrase from a whole lot of people that say the exact same thing, that the 2 hours on stage is heaven, you know, and the time on the bus or the time in the on the airplanes and all that is just it's tough. It's not what what they just don't want to do it. And John has done so much of it. Of course, I think he's entitled to do whatever the hell he wants to.
right.
I did see his last Shakti tour when what's his name was still alive. It was about 3 years ago, maybe.
The great Zakir Hussein. Yeah.
He came to Atlanta. I had, his PR people were close to me. We did some work with them, and I had great seats. So that's all I can tell you is I had great seats and saw the tour and the love that was that in that audience for him. It was a sold out 3,000 person theater, it was show, auditorium, whatever you want to call that. And they just went crazy for every note that was played all night long. It was just, and I can see why you'd want to do that, but getting on the plane, dealing with the airports, dealing with your instruments, Howard Paul, he's he's Howard, God bless him. He's the president of Benedetto, but he's also a working musician.
Right.
He's gigging all the time. I'm on a plane to New York. I'm on a plane to LA. I'm on a plane to San Francisco. I'm on a plane to here. I'm on a plane to that. I mean, he's a working musician in addition to his responsibilities at Benedetto, being the,
I last saw him at a Pat Martino memorial that he played at.
Yeah.
in New Jersey on the Jersey Shore, and he sounded great.
No, I mean, Howard is a good example of a guy, and of course, and they're all concerned about planes, and then of course, it's grabbing those. Everybody wants to see the great arch tops too. I mean, when you go see a guy, I'm trying to remember who it was that I went to see, and I was disappointed that he didn't bring his guitar that he's famous for.
Huh.
He was playing, I mean, not to disparage Epiphone, but he was playing an Epiphone that was, a $900 guitar, and he's famous for playing this $15,000 guitar. And, and I wanted to hear and see the $15,000 guitar. But, I was talking to him and he said, well, you get on the planes and you do this, that, and the other thing, and blah, 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 and it just doesn't work. And then Roger Sadowski, the reason he got building archtop guitars, and now he's not building them anymore, was Jim Hall. He was having trouble keeping Jim's D'Acquisto, intact. So he built him one that would handle the rigors of the road and still have all of the sound good and all that kind of thing.
I know a lot of musicians who leave their best guitars at home. Too many accidents happen, too much fumbling on the planes, or in the hotel room.
Right.
One guy I remember that was telling me that a person came in to clean the room and accidentally tripped and stepped and broke the neck of a guitar that was just laying out, in the room.
So
Uh, Leave that shit at home, man.
well, you're a musician as well. I mean, we've in the last couple of times we got together, I read through your resume, and it's longer than my arm and my legs and my other leg, and I can't. I mean, your resume is huge, and but you're also a musician. So in terms of your own playing and direction and things that you like to listen to when you go out, let's just refine this or keep this to the guitar world for a little bit,
Okay.
because when I ask you this question, that's a pretty broad question for a guy like you. I mean, it's like, you talk to a chef and you say, "I'd like you to make me dinner," and they go, well, "Okay." Like, would you like, whatever it is you like. So two things: when you go out to um, hear music, or out of your way to hear music, or you're out of your way to listen to music from a particular artist, what are the things that you value that you would recommend young guitar players who are looking to catch your ear? What kinds of qualities and characteristics do you look for as probably the world's preeminent critic at this point? I
Uh,
know that you're so humble. When I say that, you get kind of shy, but that's just the reality of it. So go ahead.
there's so many aspects of playing that catch my ear. Individuality is certainly one. In that regard, I would think immediately of a new guy on the scene. I think he's 30, Max Light. Have you heard him?
I have not.
He's got a real refreshing tone, and his single note facility is definitely coming out of, I would say, Holsworth. Um, he does a little bit of that Kurt Rosenwinkel. I don't know that he uses a pog pedal, but he disguises the attack
Right,
of the notes, which I don't necessarily like. I prefer Pat Martino, George Benson, pick every note
right.
down. I mean, that's a school of playing that I admire greatly, Jim Hall. But this other thing, this post Holsworth, Kurt Rosenwinkel aesthetic, I dig that as well. It's something new, catches my ear. The creativity of the ideas, the note choices, all that stuff catches my ear. Just the sheer aspect of swinging is always something I'm going to be attracted to. I recently saw a Rodney Jones play, and man, it was just like thrilling to see him. I could hear the direct connection to Pat Martino in his lines, and I loved it. I mean,
Was that
I
the thing that he recently did with Frank Vignola at Birdland?
no, this was a gig at the side door out in Old Lyme, out where I live, about close to an hour away. But it was
Yeah.
the drummer Carl Allen's gig, and he had his brother Eddie Allen on trumpet and Cyrus Chestnut on piano. And Rodney, man, was killing. And just that aspect of swing and swinging with blue notes, which is in some way is becoming a lost art. There's a whole school of players, and I can maybe say coming out of Berkeley, sort of post Mark Turner, sax players and guitar players, people who emulate that. And it's almost like studiously avoiding blue notes and playing
Okay.
very angular,
For,
obtuse lines.
for guys
And
that don't know what a blue note is, and you got to remember we're dealing with all kinds of people on this station, if you will, this channel. What is a blue note?
Albert King, BB King,
Minor thirds, flat fives,
just squeezing the juice out of the note,
right?
as Carlos Santana put it. John Scofield, one of the most sophisticated jazz guitarists on the scene, will always rely, he'll fall back on blue notes. And he's like, man, I'm just trying to do Albert King, as much as he's so in the moment. And
Aren't we
probably
all?
he's probably the most impossible guy to try to copy because he has no cliches. He's so in the moment, but he will squeeze the shit out of a blue note in the course of a tune, which I love. And
You're
I
talking about John now and not Albert.
John, yeah.
Yeah, right.
Doing, I mean, connecting with his memories of growing up with Albert King
Yeah.
and just bending the strings,
We're,
getting that wailing gospel kind of holler sound in his playing, very vocal tradition.
you know
And
what's
I
really
love that.
what's really funny is I think of Schofield and Stern, those two guys specifically, as
Right.
the new guys.
Wow. No.
I know. I mean, I know. It's because at the time that they came along, they were such a departure from what Barney and those guys who are still around were doing.
Yeah.
And so I've sort of put them in my own mind to the this is the new school, of what they were doing. So
It's funny. You just mentioned Barney. That triggers something for me. In 1976, I was an intern at the Milwaukee Journal, and I was doing interviewing musicians who would come to town in advance of their gig, I guess sort of to promote the gig and perhaps help ticket sales. He came to town with the three guitars of Charlie Bird and was it Herb? Yeah, Herb Ellis and him. But I interviewed Barney for this story, and he was disgruntled, and he's like, "Jazz is dead. There's no more jazz. This is bullshit with this fusion stuff, whatever." Because he's coming directly out of Charlie Christian, but in '76, sort of the onslaught of fusion and such dismayed him to the point where I don't think that was in the headline, but it was in my story. Jazz is dead.
it
But of course, how many generations of people came on the scene since then to prove him wrong, continuing to this day.
we just had that conversation about jazz, and I just had that conversation talking about people that have that attitude about jazz is dead. And what I was telling them, with jazz guitar today, when we were doing, I've mentioned this a million times, but when I was at Eastman, I couldn't give away the ES 175 copies that we made because none of the guys wanted to buy them. Nobody wanted that. And I'll say it now, but George Benson, I was told a guy that was going to open up a jazz club not to call it a jazz club. And Rick Beato told me one time early when he only had 1 million people following him, that if he puts jazz on the label of any of his videos, it kills the viewership by 75-80%.
Wow.
And then we couldn't give away. So jazz became a 4-letter word, even though ironically it is a 4-letter word. And we're still fighting a bunch of that now, because jazz as a term is as big as the all outdoors. I mean, it encompasses so much. It's, there's the specificity. I mean, what kind of jazz? Is it jazz adjacent, to use your term? Is it bebop? Is it post bop? Is it pre bop? Is it Charlie? What is it? And is it experimental? Is it this, that, or the other thing? So it's interesting, this whole thing about jazz is dead. Um, I think it's alive and well and doing great in terms of people listening with their ears and playing some amazing stuff. I mean, we talk of,
Yeah,
Josh Meader, the Australian guitar player is amazing,
incredible.
and Pasquale, of course, Grasso is incredible, and there's a whole host of people who are just doing amazing, amazing things. To tell that to your drummer friend. Um,
Yeah, I mean, man, it's a deluge. Check out this guy, Max Light.
I'm
He's
going to, you know what, you
extraordinary.
told me about him the last time we talked, and shame on me, I haven't gotten together with him at all.
One thing about like coming from Barney Kessel's point of view,
Yeah,
uh, jazz is dead. You know, once upon a time, jazz used to be a boys' club,
yeah,
right? And it was very specific and it was defined by swinging or not swinging.
right.
And so many things have been changed about that in recent times, including the door opening up to women players who are profoundly good. And I just made a list of these are all women sax players under 40 who are killing. Of course, Lakeisha Benjamin, she's an alto player. She did a tribute to John and Alice Coltrane that was remarkable. Melissa Eldana, Julieta Eugenio, both Melissa's from Santiago, Chile. Julieta's from Buenos Aires. They're both absolutely absorbed the language of jazz, the swing factor into their playing, bringing something new to it. Sarah Hanrahan, Nicole Glover, Alexa Tarantino, on and on. Jazz vibist, Patricia Brennan and Sasha Berliner. These are all composers who know a lot about the history, but are bringing something to the music. There's a woman in London, Nubia Garcia, who's blending aspects of hip hop and Afrobeat in jazz. Reggae and other diasporic sounds. The whole thing with London, in fact, there's a London connection that is really fertile. Shabaka Hutchings, tenor player, Nubia, I mentioned. This cat, Theon Cross, who's a tuba player, and he's got like incredible groove oriented, but full of free improv and electronic fusion stuff. And so the scene in London is fantastic. There's dozens and dozens of players I could cite. But then you have to think about, wow, there's also a scene in Finland and Spain and Germany, and Italy. And these are jazz adjacent players who are bringing something of themselves to that aspect of swinging and playing in that tradition. They know who Coleman Hawkins is, but they also dig electronica. Here's a guy, Tarun Balani, he's a drummer composer based in New Delhi. He's bringing the spirit of Pakistani music and his Sindhi heritage into the idea of jazz improvisation. So more so than ever, jazz has become a open-ended international music that keeps expanding, and I think it's getting richer and richer by the decade. There's so many people bringing their talents to it, and yet, it remains a music rooted in the tradition that goes back to Louis Armstrong, whose premise was take a scale and make it wail. But these people, these people are taking, a scale and adding some Pakistani Sindhi music to it and some hip hop. And man, it's wailing in a different color, but I'm digging it. And it's making me interested in checking out what else is going on. There's a
You know what really it brings to mind is, back in the day, I mean, guys listened with their ear, they heard what other people were doing, and they copied it and they played, and then they would find new things to do with that, all pretty much by ear. I mean, a lot of them, that was pretty much by ear. And today, guys have studied and they know exactly what they're doing.
Hmm.
I mean, from rhythmically, they can speak fluently, rhythmically what they're doing. They can speak harmonically what they're doing. They know everything. The level at which I wish people understood the level at which these people understand what they're doing. If more people understood jazz, more people would appreciate it, if you know what I'm saying. Because, to some people it's just random, and some of it is a little bit random, but they don't really but if we could just educate them a little bit to listen and hear, because these guys creating this stuff, they're not, if you don't know Jackson Pollock, you think he's just throwing paint on a wall. Well, he kind of is just throwing paint on a wall, but boy, he's got an education on how to throw it. He really knows what he's doing, and that the same could be said for a whole lot of artists. It's like, they've really worked at their whole thing. But you're bringing up females, and I wanted to kind of jump on that because we try to say as many things about the female players out there as we possibly can, and I hesitate to to bring up anybody's name because I'm going to leave out a whole bunch of people and they'll all get pissed off. But one of my favorite is Eleanor Ostrino, who's over in Italy.
Yeah.
Oh my God, I don't.
How did you get in touch with her? She has not played in the States yet.
No, no, I've known Eleanor for since we started the magazine. I think
Wow.
she was like third or fourth cover.
She
Really?
is fabulous. I did a piece for Downbeat on Emily Remler in conjunction with the recent release that was a live recording of Emily. And for that piece, I interviewed a number of women guitar players and I got in touch with her. I did a Zoom chat with her, and in preparation for that, I had checked out some of her videos and stuff.
Hmm.
She's remarkable.
Oh,
She's absolutely killing, swinging jazz guitarist of the highest order.
I mean, on many days she's my favorite. Period. I don't, regardless of sex, she could be a leopard for all I care. I mean, she's just amazing. I mean, it's have you seen her do her Oscar Peterson transcriptions?
No,
And who is the
but
other?
I don't doubt it. She's got unbelievable chops and
I mean,
facility, and it's
tone, chops, respect for everything. I mean, she's just amazing. And do you know Dr. Molly Miller? Do you know Molly?
is that the woman who just did a Wes Montgomery tribute album?
I don't know about that. She's out on the West Coast. Has her doctorate and everything that has to do with music. And she's more of a less of the old. She'll do a lot of new music. I mean, I say new music, 70s and 80s music, and she brings in stuff that you wouldn't expect, and then puts her thing on it. But I mean, she's amazing. Cheryl Bailey, of course. I mean,
Right.
we could go on and
Swing,
on and on
swinging.
with people.
She's great. Man. And what about Camila Meza?
Well, I've got a whole list here because while I'm doing this, I'm actually searching things. Yeah, but she's amazing, and she sings. And
Yeah.
her singing, I mean, I love her. I love her singing. I love her playing. I've got I'm a guitar player singer myself, so I've got a soft spot for people that do both. That's my,
Well,
you
she
know,
also does the Benson thing of simultaneous
oh yeah,
scatting and unison
yeah, yeah.
lines.
No, she's
She's killing that.
yeah, no, I mean she's phenomenal. I mean there's no getting over it. Um, but there's just a ton of great players. But I like to bring up Eleonora whenever I can because I've mentioned to her about coming to the U.S. every time I talk to her. I probably interviewed her maybe 6 times.
Wow.
Yeah, so you can find them out. You just go to Jazz Guitar Today and search Eleonora and you'll find her.
I just wrote a letter for her. She's trying to get a visa, and I
Yeah.
had to do this form, and write an explanation of why she should be allowed to come into the States
And you know
because
what?
she has a rare talent and a gift.
She is
Bring that.
she is so sweet.
Yeah.
She's one of the nicest people that you will ever meet. She's just a doll. And it's interesting. I mean, she's making, she's doing well over in Europe. I mean, she stays quite busy. But anyway, you bring up the females. Yeah, and of course she teaches. Um, like I said, they all teach. But yes, well, she's great. So anyway, getting back to where we were, we got about 10 more minutes, and then I've got to turn into a pumpkin on you, and I'm sure you've got things you got to do too. But um, so from a player point of view, you as a player point of view, so you were talking about you look for people to play blue notes, and for you,
Well, I mean, one aspect, I also look for people to play stuff that I've never seen before. And
that's where
I'm
I was
like,
going. Yeah, now you're,
holy fuck, what is that? And I'm intrigued,
yeah,
you know? Uh, I, I will say again, that guy, Max Light, he blew me away when I saw him. There are others, people that have a different approach to the instrument, a different conception of like, I mean, think about Holdsworth. His conception of the instrument was so unique. His his linear approach was so personal and unique. And people like that who are inventors or Jocko, people
Wait,
that come up with shit that's unprecedented,
interestingly enough,
I'm always intrigued by that.
You mentioned Holdsworth, who I
Yeah,
had a beer with. I've got a picture of me with a Guinness with Alan.
just one.
Well, he had more than one.
That's what
I'm
I'm
a
talking
lightweight.
about.
I can't even do a sip, and I'm like on my ass. But um, we were at the NAMM show, and I went to the NAMM show for 30 years, and I
Right.
was in the business of, and he is at the Carbon booth at the time. And he had a model that was named after him. And they've got a little table that's out in front, and he's just sitting there by himself. I mean, literally, people are walking by, walking by, walking by. And I sat there and watched for 5 or 10 minutes, and nobody even looked at him. They didn't even pay attention to him. And so I walked up to him and I said, Alan, I, I know who you are. I'm a huge fan. And blah blah. It's a I was trying not to be a fanboy, but to be respectful and honor him.
Right.
And he said, well, you need to come out to the studio and need to, I mean, he was like, couldn't have been nicer. I mean, really, really nice. And he said, you know what? He says, I'm going to be having I can't do the accent, but I'm going to be having a Guinness over at the Hilton. After the show, why don't you come over? He probably said that to 30 people, or 300 people that day. So because I would go to the Hilton anyway, I walked in. I didn't know if he would really be there. I walked in and there he was. So I literally pushed my way through about 50 people, I mean, I made myself an obnoxious mess to get to the bartender because I didn't want Alan to leave before I got him his Guinness because I wanted to have that moment. And I get a couple of Guinnesses and I walk up to him and I said, like this, remember me? He got a smile about as big as you can get. And it just so happens that a guy I knew had a camera because back in those days you didn't, iPhones didn't have weren't, there
Right.
was no such thing. He had a
Mm.
real honest to God 35 millimeter film camera. Snapped a picture of he and I together. So anyway, where I was going with this is I watched I came across a video that he's in about a week ago. And I said, not just out of in the back of my mind, I'm going, is he really as good as ever, as we remember him being? Because some of these guys that are gods, in their technique doesn't hold up to today's technique. Their playing still does, of course, but it's just, is he all that in a can of tuna? And I was stupefied at how good he was and how his music and his technique and his everything that he does, his approach, everything is still leading the pack in many, many ways. It's just, so when you mention his conception of in changing everything that there is to change. Yeah, he was the guy. He still is the guy. I I, I don't think anybody has surpassed him. There are people that are doing really cool things. Matteo Macuso was doing some amazing shit. Uh,
Incredible.
yeah, I mean it's just like I mean the guy as uh as Arnold Palmer said about Jack Nicklaus after losing about three Masters in a row to him. He said, that guy plays a game of which I am not familiar. So you watch Mateo and he's just, I mean, it's just amazing. But but I mean, but Alan Holdsworth's playing still holds up. He's he's not just to be venerated for who he was and what he brought and the changes that he made. He's still somebody you just go, huh? What?
Yeah.
You know?
I have two anecdotes about Alan. Well, I have a million. I have enough to write a book, actually. Maybe I will. But one time, Larry Coryell told me, he's like, the first time I saw Holdsworth in concert, I couldn't understand what was happening. The notes were going up, but his fingers were going down. And then Mike Stern, I remember taking him to the Bottom Line to see Alan, and his response was, "It's not guitar.
Uh, it's not.
It's something else."
Yeah, well you know the history of all of that. He uh was talking about not Mike Stern, but who were you talking who was the first guy you mentioned? I'm sorry, brain's going soft. Uh
Larry Coryell?
Larry Coryell,
Yeah.
one of my all-time favorites. And in the last few minutes that we have here, let's talk about Larry for a few minutes. When we went out, we jump around a little bit. He was my favorite back then. Absolute favorite because I think I may have mentioned this to somebody at one point. He was the closest thing to what I could relate to in terms of my own playing, which at the time was fairly pentatonic. And, he sounded like a rock player with a jazz guitar. When I say a rock player, his tone certainly wasn't that. His tone was, all the jazz thing. Of course, he had that Hagstrom Swede that he played. But, you know, I just thought I thought he was great. And every time he put out a record, I bought it and listened to him. I got a chance to hear him play live with Mitch Mitchell,
Wow.
B. Mitch Mitchell, and the bass player was Bootsy Collins, and the other bass player was it Jimmy Haslip? Might have been. I mean,
Was that the Experience Hendrix tour?
no, it was a NAMM show.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, the NAMM shows used to be great for that. I mean, I got to see Eddie Van Halen with I mean, with a whole with Tower of Power. Tower of Power horns, Eddie Van Halen on the guitar, Sam Kinison on vocal.
Wow.
What is going on down there? It was just absolutely nuts. But no, it was a NAMM show, and Mitch Mitchell I guess he's my all-time favorite drummer. I loved him. I mean, I just loved him. I thought he was great. I like both of those guys up in that era. I like Ginger Baker a lot too. I like his playing. I like that rock music doesn't have to be 2 and 4, it's
And Over the Bar Line, and Mitch,
oh,
of course, was way into Elvin Jones.
oh yeah.
You can hear it on Are You Experienced and all of it. Axis Bold's Love.
Those
If Six
guys
Was Nine, he's like completely swinging on that.
those guys don't they just don't get enough credit for what that was, and they get a lot of credit, but they still don't get enough, I mean, how do you but Mitch
Uh,
so I got to watch him. I'm talking I'm like 8 feet away from him. He's on a stage, and Larry Coryell's like 4 feet away, and Bootsy's in front of me, maybe 2 feet away. I mean, we're like right there with these guys, and they're not holding back. I mean, they're playing, and it
mm.
was like I said to the guy who was standing next to me, I said, "You realize what we're watching here and listening to? I mean, do you know what's going on? Oh yeah, man, I know, yeah, one of the Stones come on. I mean, it's it's crazy. Um,
I should tell you that I have a Substack column, and a few columns back, I did a piece on Coriel in the group that he was in, the Free Spirits,
Uh-huh.
which I identified as the first fusion band. 1965. Bob Moses was the drummer, and as he said, Coriel was the first cat that I ever saw who could play equally real in both bags, Chuck Berry and Wes Montgomery. You know,
I thought he was I thought he was phenomenal. I talked to him. He was endorsing Court at one time, their guitars.
right?
And he was in the booth, by himself. No one's paying attention to him. All my heroes nobody paid attention to. But when in fact I was at the NAMM show when Carlos Santana couldn't get arrested.
Hmm.
He'd walk all over the show. He put his guitar in a leather bag and walk all over the show and nobody cared. There's Carlos. And that was before he had his second or third career. I don't remember which one, but and but anyway, I'm losing my I'm losing my page left and right here. Who was the guy I was just talking about? Larry Coryell?
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean Larry was I walked up at the court booth and talked to him, and I asked him to sign my NAMM badge. Now I don't do that.
Hmm.
I met John Entwistle, I met Eddie Van Halen, I met Steven Stills, I've met a shitload of people at the NAMM show. But
Right.
I asked Larry, I said, can I, and he signed and I still have it. It's in my drawer, from all those years ago. But I I he was my guy. And then, McLaughlin obviously. That was over my head, I mean, it was just over my head. I loved it, but it was over my head. I didn't get it. And then when DiMeola came along, that was all kind of, sequential, but in a short space of time and all of that. That to me didn't have the same fire because I wasn't that kind of a player. They were so ensemble and they were so great at it. Now that going back and listening to it from this perspective, I get it. But at the time, it was like, you know, I couldn't catch up to it, if you know what I mean. It was
What
just,
about Pat Martino, Joyous Lake?
I love Pat Martino. Yeah, I listen to I still have the record. I mean, somewhere around the house here, I've still got the record. Yeah, I love Pat. He played back then. He played less. Um, you were talking earlier, and I was going to mention this when it came to Barney. Um, Barney played, according to Bruce Foreman, who's got Barney's guitar.
Mm,
Okay, and
right.
and Bruce actually tours with it, and Pat Bergerson, who's got Chet Atkins Super 4000. They've actually got a concert program that they do together and they get together and they do 100 years of music because it's celebrating each of those guys turn 100 in the same year.
Nice.
And but I played both of those guitars. And I asked Bruce, I said, is this how the guitar was set up when Barney was playing it? He said, no. He said, Barney played with you know, welding wire about an inch off the fingerboard. And I was listening to him this morning. Somebody had posted a Barney Kessel clip, and you can hear it because the attack. You got attack, rise time, crest factor, decay, long tail. That's kind of what you look at. The attack is so percussive on Barney that going back to what you were talking about earlier, it's just
Right.
it's and George, the same way. It's a very percussive. Wes the same way,
Coryell.
and
Coryell has
Coryell is the
it's a lot
same
of
way.
resistance that he's almost fighting the guitar.
Yeah, I mean, and that's part of the gig. That's part of what's going on. So when I hear the new guys play with all that gain, um,
It's cheating.
to me it is. Yeah, it doesn't sound as good.
Yeah.
The only guy that gets away with it is Holdsworth, who had shitloads of gain, and I'm not sure why he gets away with it, and a lot of these other guys don't. But it's definitely not. It's not the same instrument. When you're playing with nines and eights and you've got, a 16-inch fret radius, I mean, a 16-inch radius on your fretboard, or a 20 in some cases, and you got the high frets and all that kind of stuff. there is no attack. I mean, if you were to look at it on a scope, take if you had a robot that would deflect the string with the same pick, all right, and into the same processing, which is basically a flat wire is what you want, and run that through a scope and look at those factors that I was just talking about, attack, rise,
Right.
on guitars with thick strings and thin strings. Now, Rick Beato did a whole study on this, and he swears that you can't tell the difference between an 11 and an 8, you know. But I don't think he's listening. I don't know. I don't want to put words into Rick's mouth because I'm a huge fan of Rick's, but I don't think he's listening for the same thing that I'm listening for. I just don't. And that percussive whap. And when I saw Pat play here in Atlanta a couple times actually, but when I saw, he was playing for the 412 Marshall cabinet.
Huh.
Did I mention this to you last time? Because I've
I
told the
don't
story once.
think so.
He played with I
Marshalls.
think it was a Claris or acoustic image top, and he insisted on a 412 Marshall. And what's his name? The drummer that played with him. Who was the drummer that played with him the last 10 years or so of his career?
Um,
Yeah, me too. I have to look it up. But uh,
you mean the Oregon group with Pat
no,
Bianchi and
Pat Bianchi and that drummer. I've looked it up a million times, and if I was a drummer, I would know, but I'm not. Um,
where's my Prevagen when I need it?
well, I'm looking it up right now.
I need a Prevagen and tonic over here.
uh,
Carmen Intore. Boom.
well,
I still got it.
Joe D'Onofrio, of course.
Yeah. Carmen Intore. Yeah, he's a great drummer.
Yeah, Carmen and Tori. That's where I'm at. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, 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 yeah,
I
yeah.
mean, amazing drummer. The guy
Yeah.
is great. So I walked up to Carmen and I said to him, I said, man, I said his guitar is like a kick drum with tone, with pitch.
Mm,
And he laughed. I said, you guys are because Pat didn't wait for anybody. I mean, Pat was, he was the timekeeper in that group, which
right,
is like blows my mind.
right,
Playing single note lines, and he's the one that's like driving it. But Carmen was so cool in his playing. He's playing off of all that,
right.
and the texture was like, it was just a huge texture that was created. They were a great trio. Pat Bianchi, of course, was wonderful.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah. Well, Martino had thick gauge, but low action.
Low action. Yep.
Yeah.
I played
And
I played his guitar setup, not his the guys at Benedetto are sponsors of ours.
ah,
And we've reviewed the Martino, and when they sent it to us, they sent it set up as Pat played it, as they had set it up for Pat. And it was really surprising with those thick gauge. The thick gauges were only at the top. As you went lower in the strings, the E, A, and D string, they weren't crazy, like a 12 set, that kind of a thing. But that top string was like a 16 or an 18 or something. It was like, whoa. And
mm,
that but the B string wasn't terrible. It wasn't great, but it wasn't like that E string it was a garage. It was crazy, but yeah, it was quite low. But it still had that percussive, and the way that he used his amp, and the way that he used those 412, because you're moving a lot of air with 412s,
right.
and the way it sounded. I mean, it was powerful. It was powerful, and it was just really. So I love, how can you not love Pat's playing? And I thought when he was younger, when he did Joyous Lake, I thought he was more, um, I guess less beboppy. I guess I don't, less pure bop and more. I think he was a little bit more influenced by the rock players of the day, if you know what I mean.
Plus, I think they treated his guitar in post-production with a little bit of effects on the instrument.
Well, that I don't
He,
know. Yeah.
he didn't play that way live, but they added like not a Mutron, but some shit to his guitar that made it sound of the day.
I I don't know. I mean, he was fabulous, and he always had some crazy ass guitar. He loved fancy guitars.
What was that? The Abe Rivera
Yeah, that thing was
that
like
weighed like 50 pounds
it
or
had
something.
to. It had to. And then I love the Gibson that he designed, and
Yeah.
Joe D'Onofrio will privately tell you the story about that because he negotiated that contract and all those things. But Benedetto did him a real did him a solid. Is that still a praise? I mean, they really that. In fact, if I could have any guitar right now, I'm not in the guitar acquisition mode. I've got six of them like right here.
Mm.
Um, but if I could have any new guitar, and I can't sell it, I have to play it. Both of them are Benedettos. One of them was one that Bob carved the top on for the 50th reunion, I think it was, that Dave Miner owns, and it's antiqued. I wouldn't say it's what I wouldn't say it's relict, but it looks like it's 100 years old. And I mean, Bob carved it so thin that it's so resonant. There's no pickup in it, and it's just an amazing instrument. But for an instrument to play out gig and all that kind of stuff, it would be the Pat Martino model.
Mm.
It does so many things well, and there's a lot of guys that are playing them because solid body has its advantages, and and especially for guys that play a little bit louder, i.e. me. It has its advantages, but I love that instrument.
I was on a jury panel with Pat for a competition, a guitar competition, West Montgomery International Guitar
Okay.
Competition. And Pasquale Grasso ended up winning it. And the prize was a Benedetto guitar. They sponsored the event.
Wow.
And I don't know that he's ever since played it. Every time I've seen it, he's never had a Benedetto, but he did win that one. And he was clearing away the best. Number two was Dan Wilson, another
Dan
great player.
Dan's amazing. Yeah.
Yeah,
Dan's great. Um, they're very different players.
right.
Dan's a little bit more in the traditionally tonally, if you know what I mean. Uh, but Pasquale I mean, they're both great players. I mean, that's the thing. There's so many guys that are good.
This is the point.
Yeah, there's so many guys that are good.
There's a deluge of
Getting back
new
to an hour
stuff.
ago, we were talking about your drummer buddy. You're not trying, buddy. You're not trying.
He's wrong and bitter.
He is wrong and he is bitter, and I don't even know the guy, but God
Uh,
bless him. Buy him some juju bees and get him a cup of coffee or something and make him feel better about himself. Because there's it's never been better. I mean, all you got to do
I
is,
agree.
Eric Clapton. I mean, I love Eric Clapton. I mean, I still enjoy listening to him play a lot. I always want to know what he's going to do. Um, but his chops, I mean, 9-year-olds from China are killing him chop wise. I mean,
Yeah,
I mean, so the world chops is something that everybody has now.
right, right.
Everybody's got chops. It's like everybody's got a palette and with a lot of paint on it.
I saw a 10-year-old Japanese girl playing Donna Lee on the bass
I've seen that. I've
on
seen
a
that.
YouTube video. And it's
And
like,
and well, I mean, if you were to not look at her and listen, and have you seen that little like 9 or 10-year-old blues kid?
yeah.
Oh, I mean,
But you know what's the thing? This is a good point. The bass player who was originally in Living Color,
Mhm.
Skillings, he told me when he was coming up, he was shedding on Jocko's first album.
Right.
And his brother was a musician, his older brother. And at some point, when he had gone through Donnelly a million times and got it under his fingers, he turned to his brother and said, "Look what I got." And he played Donnelly. And his brother's response was, "Yeah, but can you come up with that?" And that's the shit.
And you know what? That is the shit and a good place for us to call it a day.
You dig?
I dig. Yeah. Hey, Bill, you're
Yeah,
wonderful, man. I appreciate you. So
thank you.
if you enjoy these conversations and like what we're doing with Jazz Guitar today, please subscribe, sign up, like, share, follow. It really does make a difference. You know, the Ferrari in the parking lot is this big because I have a you know, a little toy down there that, you know, so I can tell people I've got a Ferrari in my parking lot. You know, we're not here for the money, folks. But it does help if you if it does help if you help us. Um, and it is a professional organization that you know, Joe Perry and Raul and Valerie Amador are out in the West Coast, and you know, we do have expenses to bring this to you. And everything. Obviously, we do more than just the interviews. There's a whole lot. There's articles every week.
Right.
We publish almost every day. So help us out, like, share, follow, tell your friends. Send me an email. It's bobbaker at jazzguitartoday.com. Let me know what you like, what you don't like. And Bill, let me just say this before we go. We may try streaming this live,
How does that
and
work?
we'll record it and play it later, but we may try streaming it live and be able to maybe answer some questions. Now, there may be three people watching it when we do it the first time, but you got to start somewhere, right?
Yeah. All right.
Bill Milkowski, Bob Baker, Jazz
Can
Guitar
I
Today.
can I drop in a plug?
Yeah, please.
Check out my Substack column. The last one I did was on Alan Holdsworth. In his birthday was a couple of weeks ago, and I did a lengthy piece about Alan that incorporated two interviews I had done with him over time. And I covered so many different people in that column. It's just Substack in my name, Bill Milkowski.
Spell all that so people can hear it.
Bill
No, no, not your
Mil.
name, but the this what is it, sub? What is it called?
You don't know Substack?
I don't.
It is the premier outlet for writers these days who want to get beyond the limitations of 1,000 word stories in downbeat or whatever.
So
You
it's
can write on,
Substack. Substack.
yeah. It's
Is
an
it
outlet for writers of all stripe,
is it
political,
is it dot
music.
com or what is it?
Yeah, Substack.com, and then you can do a search on my name and
All
it'll
right.
come up. But yeah, I just did a piece on Alan. It came out really well. And the photo that is I used as the opening photo, he's doing one of those stretches. I can't even get close to it, but the ridiculous stretches where he's doing an arpeggiation and it's like he's an alien with that.
Well, you met him in person, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah,
Many
his
times.
hands were like that.
Right.
I mean, they were huge.
Incredible.
And it's the same thing with what's his name? What the guy? He had a guitar with a funny squirrel from Gibson. You know, East Coast guy, same era as Barney and those guys. What was?
Hmm.
Oh, yeah, my brain's dead. I'm totally brain dead. Known for having big hands, big.
Oh, Tal
Del
Farlow.
Farlow, yeah, same kind of
Yeah.
thing, you know, just stuff that you just go, I can't do that, you know. I if I do that and measure that, and I measure what that stretches you just did, I need this to do that, you know.
Yeah.
I can't do it. Uh,
Unbelievable.
let me mention one more female guitar player that I'm in love with. I think she's great. She's an educator. She's smart. She's a promoter. She plays. She practices every day. She's taught thousands of people, and that's Beth Marlis
Hmm.
out on the West Coast. So if you get a chance, check out Beth. See you, man.
Great.
Appreciate it.
Thanks again.
Bye, Bill.
Take care, Bob.